Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Tap Talks, where our mission is to educate the industry while also bringing a little bit of fun. It is 2020 after all. People are tired of Zoom meetings and webinars and whatever else. People are bored. So we want to bring some education while also bringing a little bit of fun. So that's why we're here at Waterman Brewing today, a local Elk Grove brewery. We're going to be sampling some beers, sipping while we educate, while we learn, listen to our industry experts. So let's get right into the first beer. Hey Jeff, we got Jeff here, the local brewmaster. He's going to tell us about the first beer we'll be drinking.
Hey guys, this is a Russian stout, and it's a little bit on the stronger side, 6.5%. Nice dark malty beer, some notes of some chocolate and maybe some coffee in it. It's a good beer for a cold day.
It's a good breakfast beer is what it is, right? So if you're following along and you've got the beer at home, pop this one and enjoy it with us. Cheers.
Cheers.
With it being 2020, what topic would we start with other than COVID? So we figured it's important for us to educate people on what's being done to get people back into buildings safely and to make people feel safe as they move back into buildings, whether they're returning to work, going shopping, occupying malls, the holidays are coming. How comfortable are we going to be out there on Black Friday, jamming our way into a Walmart trying to get that TV that's on sale, right? So we figured, let's go out to our buddy Rich Berliner with Connected Real Estate Magazine. He's got an event coming up on November 16th and 17th, the Connected Real Estate Virtual Summit. They're talking about this very topic. How do we get people back safely, and how do we make people feel safe going back into buildings post-pandemic? So let's throw it to Rich and let's find out what he's hearing out there.
Hi guys, Kenny, thank you for inviting me to be here today. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in the office and not having the time you guys are. I'm stuck with an iced coffee and don't have a beer, but I'm glad to be part of this today, and I appreciate you inviting me. I really think what you're doing in terms of looking at this return to work and how technology and connectivity fits in is really important, and I appreciate having an opportunity just to kind of fill you in on what I'm seeing. It's interesting, I was on a call this morning with a group, a new company that is doing an elevator antivirus or a sort of refreshing the air in elevators. And they were talking about this topic. And it's funny how you see products and all kinds of things popping up. Again, you and I have talked in the past about things like view glass, UV lighting for disinfecting purposes in buildings. And what's cool about it is it all needs connectivity to work. So I think the things that you're doing at Pulse and with your endeavors in getting connectivity into buildings is terrific, because it's so necessary. And you know, a fellow that is part of this event that we're doing an event on November 16th and 17th, of which I know you're taking part. But John Gilbert, who is part of Real Estate Board of New York, who's cooperating with us, once said to me, Rich, all this prop tech stuff is great, but without connectivity, it's not going anywhere. So I always appreciated that comment, and it means a lot in terms of what we're doing now with the return to work. At this conference I mentioned, the Connected Virtual Tech event, November 16th and 17th, the first speaker that we've asked to join us is a woman who's written a book about the psychology of work. And we've asked her to come and speak on the psychology of returning to work and feeling safe in buildings. So that is kind of a terrific lead-in to all the good works that you folks are doing. And again, I wish I was there with you live and we could be enjoying ourselves together. But one day soon, hopefully, we will get to do that. So I'm going to throw it back to you.
Hey, Rich, we're bringing up these technologies to our customers, and they're always asking, why can't we just use Wi-Fi? Why do you have to put in a full-blown DAS or these other technologies that are so pricey?
When we talk about connectivity, there's more to it than just what building owners think is the only important thing is Wi-Fi. There's so much more now, and I know you're experimenting and working on CBRS, which we find building owners very, very interested in, Wi-Fi 6 and those kinds of things. But connectivity really means a lot of different things, everything from riser management to the fiber coming into the building and going up vertically and into tenant spaces. So it's really one giant ecosystem, if you think about it, and so many different pieces that fit together with that. But we're really excited that there's so many new things coming that landlords will have to choose from. And everything, in the world where everything's a hammer, the solution is always a nail. I think the opportunity for every landlord potentially to choose different things based on his needs or her needs in buildings is really going to be the touch point for what we're doing for return to work.
Thanks, man.
I mean, we talk about that all the time, right? It's not you need a DAS, you need a small cell, you need a private LTE, right? It's
Right.
What is the problem you're trying to solve, and let's make sure you have the right solution for that problem. And it's not one size fits all by any means. Greg, I know you've got some thoughts on the Wi-Fi versus the private LTE versus everything else, right? So,
Well, right now, I think it's really in flux. We're starting to define new technologies for wireless connectivity. Number one, CBRS.
Right.
What's that going to look like? Wi-Fi 6. Just last week, ABCO and NIPSTIC filed with the FCC to try to regulate the 6 gig band because of the microwaves that are there. So we're going to see some things that happen over the next couple of years that are going to define what I would call private connectivity is going to look like. CBRS, Wi-Fi 6, standard Wi-Fi. As well as we're going to see some changes in the carrier side, where we're going to start seeing some very high frequency 26 gig systems for carrying, the very high frequency stuff. That's going to be 26 gig.
Like 5G, millimeter wave?
Yeah, it will be 5G, but millimeter wave. Yeah, exactly. Millimeter wave. Okay. Millimeter wave, 26 gig, those type of things are going to start coming into play too. And they all have very different ways of dealing with how we're going to propagate that RF through a building.
Right.
And then, of course, Rich mentioned fiber. I think that's realistically, we may start seeing in hotel rooms and office environments where we actually have fiber to the hotel room or to the office, and they end up with their own little very tiny microcell just to cover their office, to bring the connectivity that they need there. And that could be millimeter wave, it could be cellular, there's a whole host of things. So as we move forward, we're going to be seeing a lot of different type of wireless connectivity come into play.
well, let's bring it back to the subject at hand, though. What about how are these things enabling COVID use cases for us to return safely? So, I mean, is that type of connectivity, is that type of system required? Do we need 5G type solutions? Do we need private LTE type solutions? Do we need private connectivity solutions? Can Wi-Fi do the trick? Does it need Wi-Fi 6?
That's going to be a good question. I think ultimately what's going to happen, I think we're going to start seeing more diverse workspaces where they're more distributed. Rather than the large building that has 8,000 users in the Time Life building in New York, we're going to see more people working at home. So I think that, or smaller office environments. So I do think it's going to be in flux. How much bandwidth do we need to get the job done? I think that's the big question. It's going to be bandwidth. It's not necessarily what frequency, it's going to be how much bandwidth do we need to deliver for a particular application for a particular customer. And that can occur in different spots. That could be on the standard cellular network, that could be CBRS, that could be 2.4 gig, 5.8 gig. Right. There's so many things that are going to come into play here. And how we deploy that is the question. Do I think that we're going to have conventional DAS? I think conventional DAS is going to be around for a while.
For now, I think it's probably time to move on to our second beer and chat with our good buddy Chris Wixom to find out what use cases are actually being deployed in the field right now. So, hey Jeff, what do you got up for us next?
Hey Ken, yeah, I got this is a hazy IPA that we call Georgiana Fog.
Oh, I like this.
It's really popular for us. It's got a huge bouquet of hops, nice citrus aroma, not too bitter. Very good beer, good seller for us.
Georgiana Fog. What's that name about?
It's named after the Georgiana Slough in the Sacramento River there.
Oh, right on.
And so we got friends that live there, and we brewed the beer there, came up with the recipe, and came out and it was all foggy, and that's what we called the beer.
Oh, that's
Georgiana
awesome.
Fog. Yeah.
Very cool. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
If you're following along, this is the Georgiana Fog. Join us. It's good. It's good. Well, let's chat with our good buddy Chris Wixom from JMA and find out what use cases they're seeing currently installed out there right now.
Sounds good.
Okay, good.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. Chris Wixom, I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Sales for JMA. I would just start off talking about the overall business, right? It's supposed to grow to a $1.5 billion business. So this is an incredible amount of opportunity for us out there to take advantage of CBRS and 5G as a technology. So I just find it an exciting time for us. I do see this business growing in two phases. And I think, Rich, I think you mentioned some of this, but I think what I'm seeing out there is all kind of back office, right? So right now it's all about driving efficiencies for different companies out there. And I think that will evolve over time. So two phases, efficiencies in back office, and then secondly, around the handset and handset connectivity. And I love how that's kind of evolving, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. From a back office perspective, what are we seeing? I think most people are trying to do this because they're not seeing what they want to have out of Wi-Fi, right? They're not getting the security that they need, they're not getting the reliability that they need, or they're not getting the throughput that they need. So they're starting to move mission critical applications over to technology like CBRS because it does offer enhanced, just inherently with an LTE-based technology, you're having much, much better security with this solution. So a lot of people are moving over their mission applications, mission critical applications, just for that, just so that they can feel secure. And it's so important. If I'm going to take all of these sensors and other things that are critical in a building and move them over, I've got to know that I've got the security and the reliability behind it too. And so I think we're seeing a lot of migration just simply for that. And then the other thing is pulling fiber and having a hardwired solution is difficult too. It keeps you from the flexibility that you need in our industry today. And so if I can move that over to a wireless application as well, then that gives me a lot of flexibility, right? In verticals like manufacturing or warehousing, where you need to move the floor around, you don't want to be in a wired environment. And so one of the questions I think is probably on everybody's mind is, how are we going to get people back into the companies and the buildings? They're so used to working at home and have gotten used to doing Zoom calls and maybe don't want to drive into work anymore, and certainly don't want to put their families at risk. And so one of the applications that we see out there, just focusing on the commercial real estate business for a minute, is COVID-19 remediation, right? How do I do two things? How do I make people feel comfortable and safe that they're going into a building? And then how do I make it a better experience? How do I improve the experience of what they used to have so that they want to go back into the building and they want to get back on the road and spend 20 minutes to a half an hour driving to the office? And so what is that? I think let's go back to splitting it up between the security and the security safety side, and then making it a better experience. On the security side and the safety side, we've seen a lot of really interesting applications come out. Some will need, actually most will need connectivity as part of a CBRS solution, and some won't. But I think it's fascinating what some commercial real estate companies are doing with hydrogen peroxide and putting that in the HVAC vents. Who would have thought? But it actually kills most of the pathogens that are out there. We see things like touchless entry. So if I come into a lobby, the last thing I want to do is have to give somebody my card or touch a terminal or those types of things. And so there's all sorts of things with fingerprint recognition, with facial recognition, and other types of things where you can just walk right in to the lobby from a security perspective and not have to talk to anybody or actually touch anything. And I think those applications are pretty cool. That all requires connectivity with CBRS. The second thing is, if I can have location-based services and be able to track people through the building and be able to do contract tracing and other types of things like that, that's really important too. You got to make people feel safe. Thirdly, if I can track everybody in the building with CBRS, then I can have a flexible workspace and send people to different areas depending on what's going on in the building to keep people safe and to maximize the use of the building. The other thing that I see really coming out, which is extremely interesting, is because of 19, a lot of these commercial real estate owners have pressure on their financials. So how do I become a greener building? How do I reduce the overall costs of having a building like this? So if I can have sensors throughout the building and do things like know where people are at a floor by floor building level, I can cut the overall HVAC costs down by about 30 to 40%. So significant cost reductions. And this is already proven out. This is not something that I'm just talking about, but it's proven out by companies like Prescriptive Data, where you can do these types of things and reduce your overall costs to perform quite dramatically. And then in the future, which is not too distant for future, you're going to start to see things like robotic cleaning and those types of things. All of this requires connectivity. So that's all on the safety side. On the better experience side, it all comes down to connectivity. If I don't have connectivity in the building, people aren't going to want to come to work. Some of our customers, it's kind of interesting, most buildings aren't set up for Zoom calls. So even when people come back to the building, you're going to see a lot more Zoom calls and the need for video streaming. And so you need to set up the building differently because Wi-Fi inherently is not set up for this. So just an example of something that is tangible that needs to be done to increase the experience when people are in the building. The other thing, we talked a little bit earlier about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is great, but it definitely has its limitations. So as an example, in a building where I've got multiple tenants, let's say I've got a 40 or 60 story building, I've got multiple tenants in there. As a building owner, I can't control that, right? I can't control the tenants and the Wi-Fi that they deploy. If I'm deploying a CBRS solution, I now have control over the entire building. And so I can do things like building automation or the applications that we're talking about and actually have control over the experience. Whereas if I'm doing that with Wi-Fi, I really don't.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chris. We appreciate your time. The biggest thing I keep coming away from, right? We keep kind of diving back into our talk, which is about the different technology and everything. COVID. Let's focus on how we get back into buildings. And I think one of the biggest takeaways we're all going to have from this entire pandemic and looking forward to the future is flexibility. Things are changing rapidly. This pandemic accelerated that, but all this stuff was coming sooner or later anyways, and it's going to continue to increase the speed at which it changes. So flexibility is king. If you're going to build a new building, if you're doing tenant improvements inside of a building, anything you're investing in your building, don't think about right now. Think about 5, 10, 15 years from now, as much as you possibly can, right? So to me, what I'm hearing is whatever you install, make sure that it's future ready. Future proof is kind of BS, right? But make sure it's future ready and think about the future as much as you possibly can and think about flexibility because you never know what's coming, right?
Right. So for all the folks out there that maybe not as technical on this in this conversation, what is he saying? Like he's talking about the base station and upgrading that. I mean, you probably know about that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, when we talk about a DAS, for instance, you typically have what they call a head-end. The head-end is the device that essentially takes RF signals and turns them allows you to transfer them on, typically fiber, to an amplifier. The base stations would be what the carriers provide you for signal source. So your base station may be a 5G base station, a 4G base station. And again, 5G and 4G are modulation technologies. Remember, we talked about this. We talked about the difference between frequencies. CBRS is a band. LTE is a modulation format. It's the same thing as we move from 3G to 4G to 5G. They're different modulation formats. So the frequencies are staying, well, there may be additional frequencies, but the frequencies are staying the same. So as long as an intelligent building owner buys an intelligent solution, they're going to kind of future-proof themselves and build, they buy equipment that can handle different different modulation technologies. We're at a point now in our evolution. Back, say, 15 years ago, when we were going from FM to the digital modulation technologies,
Yep,
well, the equipment had to change because the amplifiers weren't good enough, right? An FM, something that could pass FM, wasn't really good enough to pass LTE. And I don't want to go into all the reasons behind that. But now we're to a point where these amplifiers are pretty linear.
Okay.
So look for a solution that can lead you into the next, the next phase. Look
So
for
there's-
Jesse, I'm going to decode that for you, buddy.
Okay, yeah,
What
you do
he's
that. You do that
saying
for me
is-
because
what he's saying is you've got the head, you've got where the real technology sits, and then you've got everything that's dispersed throughout the building. So what we're getting at here is that install something that you can rip out and you can replace and you can do whatever you need to upgrade, where it's not going to disturb tenants, where you're not going to disturb
Right.
building occupants, et cetera.
the cabling
Install things
infrastructure.
everywhere else
Right.
that can stay in place and be prepared for the future.
Right. So again, in my past life, it's more about laying the right fiber out there, getting enough ports, getting enough cabling out there to be able to support that, and that you can switch out later and support that
Well,
technology.
you switch out the stuff that's in the back rooms rather than
Right. Then the infrastructure.
rather
Then the
than having
infrastructure.
to switch out the antenna infrastructures. And when he talked about going to CBRS is probably going to be a play that is added at the remote location. So
Okay.
share the antennas that are already there, but the actual RF source, rather than being at the head end, will be at the remote location.
Okay.
And so all DAS vendors are going to have to deal with this. This is not something that's just particular to JMA. All DAS vendors are going to have to
Right.
take a realistic approach to the equipment they build.
And I just heard you say DAS, and that's kind of a buzzword for me for moving into our next conversation, which is DAS. When
Right.
people think of in-building wireless connectivity, the buzzword, or not buzzword, but the standard nomenclature has become DAS.
Right.
Now that, from our perspective, that's an issue, because what we see a lot of times is people trying to pigeonhole DAS, a distributed
Yeah.
antenna system, into situations where it doesn't make sense, right? One topic that constantly comes up and that we constantly rail against is we see RFPs constantly on new construction where they're saying, we need a DAS system in our building, right? And so we're looking at it and we're saying, oh, you want DAS infrastructure inside of your building. You do understand, right, that this DAS infrastructure will do no good without
A signal
the
source.
carrier's blessing, essentially, right? A signal source, without the carrier participating. It's just like putting up a building, running wiring inside of it, and then not calling your local utility to say, hey, come give my building power, come set a meter here, right? So that's a standard problem. So I thought our next guest should probably be Luke Lucas, our good buddy from T-Mobile. T-Mobile is really setting the standard for enabling carrier participation on your system. I've got to say, and I'm just going to put it out there right now, they are light years ahead of where the other carriers are at when it comes to, hey, I've got a building, I want connectivity inside of it, I'm willing to invest some of my own money. Mr. Wireless Carrier, what can you do for me to help me out get and so T-Mobile has laid out a really clear process on here. If you do this, you do your part, we will do our part. Just like you would with electricity, you wire your building, you do it properly to code,
Yep.
we'll provide you power. T-Mobile's gone through that process. They've made it easy. So let's check in with Luke and learn a little bit more about that and learn a little bit about how
Absolutely.
that's helping tenants get back into buildings safely.
I'm getting pretty low here.
Well, before we talk to Luke, let's go ahead and finish these off real quick, and let's get our third beer from Jeff. Jeff, what you got for us?
Hey guys, all right. This time I got a Snow Leopard Pilsner for you. Crisp, light and refreshing.
Got a
It's
nice,
great for a
nice
summer
hue.
day, warm day. Lawnmower beer, we call it sometimes.
Lawnmower beer. That's
Lawnmower
not like Bud
beer.
Light or anything.
Yeah, no, it's better than Bud Light.
Okay.
So this one gives you energy, doesn't put you to sleep?
Exactly. Yeah, it's got a nice, refreshing flavor to it.
Cheers.
Cheers,
For those of you
guys.
following along, what do we call this one?
That's the Snow Leopard Pilsner.
Snow.
What was that
Yeah.
from?
Snow leopard?
We did that beer for the Sacramento Zoo.
Oh, cool.
They had a snow leopard that was born in captivity, and we did a fundraising thing. Every beer we sold, we gave them $1.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So for those of you playing along at home, we're making a difference over here too.
Snow
Saving the
leopards.
world one beer at a time.
That's right. Saving the beer. Yeah, exactly. Saving the beer one world at a time.
Saving a beer one leopard at a time.
You better get through this third speaker quick, huh?
We're saving a beer one leopard at a time.
Jesse's spilling. All right, well, listen, let's make sure we focus on the mission at hand, which is education. And let's turn it over to our buddy Luke. And Luke, talk to me about, a little bit more about the BYOC program. Tell me the history. Tell me how you guys are ramping up during this COVID crisis.
5.5 years ago, we created a program called Build Your Own Coverage, or BYOC. It was really intended to be a lookalike for a fifth utility: water, sewer, gas, electricity, wireless. And today, I think it's very spot on, because the fact that COVID and crisis equal coverage, period. People need connectivity. So what is the program of BYOC? BYOC is modeled after a utility. That means that the infrastructure is the property operator's responsibility. T-Mobile then partners with that property operator, or typically their strategic partner, whether that's an original equipment manufacturer, whether that's an integrator, whether that's a consultant. That strategic partner on behalf of the client then is engaging T-Mobile and the other carriers to bring their dedicated signal source, their frequency bands, from the Federal Communications Commission. We also then bring our fiber backhaul connectivity. Those costs are all responsible and aligned with T-Mobile. There's no cost recovery from the client. There's no cost recovery from the strategic partner. And this then sets the stage, the framework for a solution delivered to, in essence, bring the outdoor signal in. And today, that is truly challenging. We know, because schoolwork is, formerly homework, is now, being, is sorely needed by connectivity for students while they're at home. Or, in some cases, we've heard from some school districts that parents are driving the students to the school district parking lot to get on the Wi-Fi. So it really is an opportunity to expand the network. Now, on the other side of the coin, in addition to working with property operators and strategic partners, we are deploying the network with sub-6 band, 600 frequency, and 2.5 across the country. Our site modification rate is achieving 1,000 sites a week here in the next month. So by the end of the year, we're going to be aggressively touching either every other site or every site in the network, depending on the frequency band. But back to BYOC. BYOC comes in 3 flavors today. So as a kid growing up, I used to love to go to Baskin-Robbins ice cream because there were plenty of choices. BYOC comes as BYOC, our original plan. That's the one that I just outlined. Secondarily, for public venues, we have a BYOC hybrid program. And last but not least, now with an accelerated time frame from property operators, trying to get tenants back into space post-COVID. We certainly hope that post-COVID is going to be sooner rather than later. Connectivity is at the forefront of their minds. So is there an acceleration or an escalation to cut a 24-week time frame down under BYOC original plan to about 12 weeks? And that is BYOC Express. Where is all this information available to whomever? The OEMs, the integrators, the consultants, or even the property operators' tenants. We have a website, tmobilebyOC.com. It's a one-stop location that gives you not only all the program collateral, but case studies of deployments that we've done. And it also has basic collateral that has discussionary points, because we all know that 80% of the in-building traffic is generated indoors. Today, people are using all their devices. They're starting and stopping indoors. So, absent a signal, then that is impairing the customer experience. And at T-Mobile, we're all about customer experience because we changed the market landscape. There aren't any contracts anymore if you don't want a contract for your cell service. There is for the service contract, but there aren't for the devices tied to the service contract, as we've known for years, which basically equated to that you're buying the device on time at 2x or greater based on your credit. So back to BYOC. BYOC is the innovative next step for the final frontier. How do you get that signal indoors? You've got to do literally create a master plan, a wireless master plan. And that's what we promote through BYOC. Create a plan for your property or properties, and then implement that plan. And we will be a strategic partner along with your dedicated strategic partner. And of course, you need all the carriers today, because bottom line, you just don't know who's going to come through your doors. owning and operating real estate today. So we don't have an exclusivity. We just want to coach and support the marketplace.
A few things that I heard. Number one, who coached them ahead of time to say wireless master planning?
know,
Because that's
right?
exactly what we talk about constantly.
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
But another thing, so COVID, specifically on the COVID front, they've got this great program that's out there. That what I want to say is AT&T and Verizon. I'm just going to come out and say it. Why is it so difficult with you? T-Mobile's done the heavy lifting and making this very easy. You as a building owner do your part. T-Mobile will do their part. Why can't AT&T and Verizon do the exact same thing? Why has it been so difficult? Let's move on. I don't want to cause too much drama in the industry. I don't want too much heat.
We still need them.
We do.
All I wanted to say was they're showing some leadership. T-Mobile is showing some leadership here. I've been doing this for a long, long time, in building probably since 1987, on the cellular side since the mid-2000s. This has been a huge issue, especially for the enterprise market. Mm-hmm. And for T-Mobile to do this, I mean, in my mind, is showing leadership, 100%. That's all I can say. It's leadership. It's understanding the need and meeting the need.
Well, how often have we gotten called in to clean up a mess like that, which is, hey, we just installed this DAS, but it doesn't work because no carriers are on it, right? So these types of actions should help clean that up. But the other thing that I heard, which is very pertinent right now, was COVID. They've got to basically their timeline for this program, if you as a building owner execute well on what they need from you, was 24 weeks. They've also taken the action to squeeze that down and say, hey, we understand people need connectivity now. If you do what you're supposed to do, we will do our part in 12 weeks. They cut it in half. That's pretty awesome. I'm not trying to make this a T-Mobile sales pitch, but that's pretty. They're taking action, right? So what we're talking about right now is real action taken to help get people back in a building safely through connectivity.
And he's
I
talking.
think it's great. No, I think it's great. I mean, other carriers,
I know
6 months, man.
It's difficult.
6 months and an act of God, and hundreds of thousands of dollars spent. This.
Well,
is
and
great.
you have to have existing relationships in general to be able to get those conversations started, right? This is something, and I want to make sure that we get the link and we talk about exactly where to go to, because this is T-Mobile's program. Let's make this clear. This is something that you don't need an integrator like us. You don't need anybody with cellular expertise. We can help facilitate some of their requirements, like testing, make sure designs are done to their specs. You're going to need some help there. You as a building owner can start this process and only bring expertise in when you need to. You don't need somebody like us to get connectivity in your building.
Right.
Maybe for certain points you're going to, but it's not a requirement. You can go to their website. They will break it down for you exactly how you solve this problem. They've got literature and they've got instructions. It's a how-to manual that all you got to do is follow your instructions. And yeah, there's a couple steps in that process that you're probably not going to be able to execute on your own, but you're going to be able to go out and find easily exactly who you can talk to take care of just those pieces. You got wireless connectivity inside of your building thanks to
I just love that he brings up this master plan. I know it's a little bit close to us and close to our heart, but no, it's not. It's not. I'm not. But I'm saying I do think that everybody should start to think about a master plan. I mean, it really is, regardless. I mean, if it's us or anything, I mean, it really is becoming an issue, and we've seen it over and over. I've heard about it.
Well, it's huge in public safety right now. We're dealing with the webinar tomorrow, discussing
exactly
having a master plan, because we have in building problems. We need in building coverage. Everybody has to play, and everybody needs to have a master
Everybody's
plan.
planning for everything else.
Exactly, and I think one of the big things, we just talk about flexibility. And how are you going to get that flexibility? It's by having a master plan. It's by thinking forward and saying, not what am I trying to accomplish right now, but thinking forward, exploring what your options are, exploring what the future problems might be, and understanding how do I prepare for the future. And you do that with a master plan. You do that by thinking ahead, not just solving for today's problems.
Exactly.
I mean, you heard Chris earlier talking about billions of dollars out there, right? They said that's how much the industry is. Well, that means that's how important that technology is at this point, right? If it's going to be that big of your market, everybody knows it's just more users, more technology, more applications. We need to be prepared. They need to be prepared. The building owners need to be prepared, not only for their tenants when you're talking about commercial real estate, but building owners of hospitals. They need to be prepared that this is just going to keep going forward and keep getting.
And so much wireless integration. it has to be brought together. At least the master plan
Yes.
has to consider all aspects. When you're a hospital, for instance, you have cellular, you have no-go baby monitors, you have your EMS talk to the ambulance, you've got your fire department, you've got all sorts of radio systems, and very rarely do they have any kind of master plan. It's like just throw things in.
Project by project.
And I think
And they're separating public safety from IoT solutions, from cellular connectivity, from private connectivity. Why are we carving all these pieces out? And I think I smell another topic coming up on a future Tap Talk, but converging networks, right?
Yeah.
Why are we treating them all as their own individual silo? If we can make them all function together, aren't we future-proofing our building that way, right? Isn't that what's going to be most powerful? So,
well, and we
Anyways,
have.
let's not
I mean,
dive too deep
it's not even a philosophy. It's a physics issue. You can't just go dump in all these different RF components.
We're getting into physics
you're
now.
gonna lose us quick,
hey,
Greg.
hey,
Well, I'm not.
I'm 2.5 deep, man.
Okay, well, but
Right
but the bottom line is, it goes back to a wireless master plan. There has to be one because you've got connectivity from VHF now to 3 and 4 gigahertz, and I know that. I mean, it may mean nothing to some people, but it all has to be planned. And to think that you don't have to plan it is folly, because you will fall at the end.
And that's why we got you on our team,
Well,
right there.
for what it's worth, for whatever it's worth.
thanks a lot, Greg. Listen, guys, I think it's about time to wrap it up. First off, thank you to our guests. Thanks to Rich Berliner from Connected Real Estate Magazine. Don't forget to check out his event on November 16th and 17th, the Connected Real Estate Virtual Summit, where they're going to do a deep dive into returning safely from COVID. Thanks to Chris Wixom from JMA. We appreciate his insights. Thanks to Luke Lucas telling us more about the BYOC program from T-Mobile. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the education on your part. Thanks to Jeff and Waterman Brewing for pouring us these delicious beers. For everybody that was following along at home, we hope you enjoyed them as much as we did. Hey, listen, the goal here is education. We want to make sure that we're bringing as much knowledge and education to the audience as possible, educating the ecosystem as much as possible. So we want to have a good time, but we also want to educate. So if you're following along live, make sure you use the hashtag #PulseTapTalks. Hashtag Pulse Tap Talks. Let us know anything you might want to hear in the future. Any questions you have, anything you want to learn more about, we're here to serve. So don't hesitate to reach out, let us know. If you're watching the recording, email us at taptalks@powerofpulse.com. That's taptalks@powerofpulse.com. Reach out, let us know, connect with us, engage with us. We're here to serve. So let us know how we can better educate you and the rest of the ecosystem. Thanks, cheers. Have a good one.
Cheers. Good job, guys.